Welcome to episode 146 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week, we play Virtue's Last Reward. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Jacob McCourt, and today I have one friend with me. She's a streamer, she's a content creator, and we like her very much. It's CtrlAltNoob. Welcome back to the show. Woo!
Thank you for having me. Hi. That was very nice.
I could say nice things about you all day long, but why don't you talk about all the nice things that you do? This is your second or third time on this show.
Third,
We've done many podcasts together, so I'm like, how many?
Many at this point, yeah. I think it's third on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, what do? I do YouTube. I do streaming. I play video games. I play a lot of games with story and mostly stream nowadays, but I have started up doing Let's Plays a bit more again recently. I play a lot of indie games too. I have an indie series where I like to play like either free-to-play games or demos and stuff, and highlight one of them per week. And I think that's kind of it.
I think that's how we discovered you is through your like PlayStation Plus content way back in the day when you were doing that.
Back in the day, yeah.
Back like at this point probably 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago? Oh my God, time flies.
What is time?
What is time? We're going to find out when we talk about this game. But if you want to hear the episodes that she was on before, she was on episodes 104, Psychonauts, and episode 121, 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors, which is the prequel to this game, Virtue's Last Reward. This game comes from Chunsoft, published by Aksys, available on a bunch of stuff: 3DS, Vita, PC, PS4, Xbox One, originally released on October 23rd of 2012, but it's been re-released a bunch of times. It's actually, I believe, on Game Pass now as well.
Yeah, it is. I forgot about that.
So if you're curious, listen to the first 20 minutes of this if you've not played it. Listen to the first 20. Get a feel for it, go play it, and then come back, because this is one of those episodes that, like, you're going to want to play yourself. It's that good.
100%.
We start the show like we start all of our shows, with the fast pitch. One-sentence description of what this game is all about. So, did you want to start, or did you want me to start on this?
I can start. I kind of had one.
Yes, please.
It is Virtue's Last Reward takes everything that the previous game did and just does it so much better. That's the pitch.
And if you've not played it, my one sentence pitch is it is half branching storylines, or half visual novel, half escape rooms, and the visual novel is one of the best that's out there.
That's more descriptive than mine was.
Yeah, but I mean, you assume that people have either seen, watched, or played 999.
Yeah.
Because I think it's actually essential that you do that before you play this. Would you say so?
I would say so, yeah. Like, it would be a shame to not, because, like, it does tie together. And, like, you would miss quite a lot, I think, if you hadn't.
On the surface, it looks like it is almost an entirely different game than 9 hours, 9 doors, 9 persons, which started on the DS, but it's kind of available in a 2-pack on every system with this game. But there are such payoffs if you play that game and then play this game that aren't necessarily immediately on the surface.
Yeah.
Before we dive in, I want to just talk about some of the stuff that came out around this game in the same month as this one in October of 12. We got Forza Horizon, we got Skylanders Giants, we got another 3DS title, Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask, The Unfinished Swan, and Assassin's Creed 3. I believe this game started on Vita and 3DS first, and then made its way to other like more traditional platforms after that. We've talked about our visual novel kind of love on episode 121 that you were on previously, but I'd love a quick recap of like how much you like games like this, kind of in the visual novel style.
Yeah, I haven't played that many, or at least at the time of playing this, or at least at the time of playing 999 anyway. I think 999 was my first visual novel, and then I think because I didn't play, I left like a good chunk of time between playing the two, and I think between them I may have played a couple of little ones, like Doki Doki Literature Club and stuff like that. But I don't actually have a huge amount of experience with visual novels, so this has kind of set the standard for me.
It's a very high bar to clear.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you what it has done. It has made me want to play more. Like I have a lot on my list that I'm like, I need to play this, I need to play that. I've played some like other ones that maybe aren't traditional, like since playing VLR, yeah, I played How Boyfriend, which was a very strange one that was like, it was interesting. It was nothing like VLR or 999, but it was a visual novel. I'm playing one called Nausea on my Switch, which I'm not keen
I've heard of that. I've heard it's very good.
It's interesting. It's a bit repetitive. It's Among Us, the visual novel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I think I haven't really gotten into the meat of it yet. It's an interesting one. And
is that one about an oil town in the US?
No, it's like on a spaceship or something. It's
okay. I'm probably thinking of a different game then.
Maybe. I'm trying to think.
I am thinking of a different game. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. It's that one's in space. Yeah, it's Among Us.
Have you played Danganronpa?
That is on my PlayStation installed right now. I'm gonna play it at some point for sure. I want to play that, and I want to play Steins Gate.
Okay, I don't describe Steins Gate really fast for me.
Something to do with time. Visual novel. That's all I know. It's a time story. Apparently, it's very good.
I love time stories, and it looks like there's also potentially an anime as well that was made from the visual novel too. So
yes,
I have played I would say probably about the same amount as you have. I've touched the Phoenix Wright games.
Oh yeah, I need to
which
play
are
those.
pretty. I've played the first one and I've touched the second one, and I have the trilogy on my Switch that I will get to at some point. I played the first Danganronpa, which I really liked. I heard that the second one maybe isn't as good, but still pretty good. And I really want to play a couple like Dream Daddy. I want to play Doki Doki Literature Club. I want to play because without spoiling things, it kind of breaks the genre a little bit in some cool ways. Yeah. There are just a bunch of them that I feel like, even the ones that bring in those like visual novel elements, like Murder by Numbers or Boyfriend Dungeon, I find is like half roguelike, half visual novel.
Right.
Like, I just want to dive into more of them is what I'm trying to say, especially after this game, because I played this game when I was unemployed, and I was literally playing it like 4 hours every day for like a week and a half, and I was in a 1-bedroom apartment with my partner who was actually working every day. And she could see me from her office just sitting on the floor, like playing Virtue's Last Reward all day. And she would just come over and be like, "Are you playing the anime game again?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, but it's so good." And like, she loves sci-fi, and I was trying to like explain it to her, and she's like, "Yeah, that sounds cool, but I didn't do a good job of explaining it." Is I guess what I'm trying to get to. Lots of visual novels we can play.
Yeah.
I'm going to read off a couple quick reviews about this game before we dive in and start talking about this one. The first one comes from Destructoid. They gave it I was actually really surprised at how high these reviews were. I thought they were going to be really middling, but a lot of them were very glowing.
Yeah.
Destructoid said 9.5. Virtue's Last Reward is a worthy follow-up to in the Zero Escape series. You need to play it. Just, play 999 first. GameSpot 8.5 Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward is a memorable and enthralling sci-fi horror adventure that will have you glued to the small screen. And IGN 9.5 2 years ago, Aksys was shocked by 999's success. This year, they shouldn't be shocked when VLR matches then exceeds its predecessor. The sequel is more twisted, more brutal, and more memorable than the first volume. It solidified Zero Escape as a series, and it's an experience I recommend to every gamer if you're over 18 and you've played 999 first. 999 was incredible. Virtue's Last Reward is even better. Get into this series now. Though that's a pretty good summary of like how I feel about this one. I want to ask you how you felt about it, but first, how did you play it? On what system?
I played on PS4. I had the double pack thing, so I played 999 on there, and then obviously I already had VLR there ready to go, so easy.
Yep, same. I played it on PS4 as well. I have the DS version of 999, but I'm really, if you're willing to get into the series or want to, I would recommend not playing that version, because in that version there's more retreading that you have to do than some of the more modern versions like PS4. So if you're interested, get the double pack. It's on Game Pass, it's on PS4, it's on PC, and those versions work really well. How do you feel very high level about this game before we talk about the craziness that is Virtue's Last Reward?
High level? What do you mean by high level?
Do you like this game? How do you feel about its story? Is it one of the best you've played? Is it one of the worst? I need to know.
All right. I love this game. This game is very good. I really enjoy the story. I was doing some recapping today of like moments that happened and stuff, and just everything about it, the pacing, not everything, it does have like occasional problems, but the mysteries that unfold as you go, like I've never been so like, what's going to happen next? And every mystery that's solved, another mystery is then given to you, and it's like, oh my god, what's going to happen next?
Yep.
I had like these moments with the characters because I was also let's playing it at the same time. I have some very memorable moments with some of the characters, and it's those kinds that every time I think back to it, it always makes me smile.
Yeah, absolutely the same. I think for a small peek behind the curtain, I typically, and most of the folks that come on the podcast, we usually play a game like within the month that we record it. So sometimes like if there's 4 people, one person played it like a month ago, but everyone kind of finished it within the 2 weeks that we record. In this case, at least for me, I played this game 2 years ago, and I feel like we needed to do this for a couple reasons. One, I don't think there's many stories that like match this one as far as like the way they one up, and the game's kind of, there's a lot of stuff happening, and most of it fits together and makes sense in a way that like they swing and they hit most of a home run.
Yeah.
And there are some frames and some images and some situations and some twists that even 2 years later, I still remember. There's a certain frame of one of the characters that happens in the very end of the game with a revelation of realizing what has happened to him. And I think I had nightmares about that for days afterwards. And it's still something occasionally that I think about.
Yeah.
I will mention what it is later. But we have to explain so much more before we get there. Mm-hmm. What is this game from like a very basic level, Noob? If you had to like describe what you're doing in it, what do you do in Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward? Yeah,
so at a basic level, like as we've mentioned, it's a visual novel. So you begin the game going through the novel section. It's kind of it's a visual novel, but it's made up with like 3D models and stuff. It's very interesting look to it, actually. Like, whereas the first one was like more hand drawn and stuff, this one is like all kind of 3D. And you go through the story. You have a flow chart which branches depending on decisions that you make. Mm-hmm. So you are basically making decisions, and then you are also playing escape rooms when you get to those, which like, I'm trying to even remember how you just kind of go in them, don't like, oh my goodness. So
I can talk about the doors if like, I think we'll talk about that, but there's a door system that dictates based on where you are in the flowchart of what escape room you go into. But I think it's fair to say that there are maybe like somewhere between 12 and 20 different escape rooms that you can do in this branching storyline that you can go back to different parts of.
Yeah, you've completely just reminded me of everything now. That's so good. Yeah, there are loads of escape rooms. Did you access the morphogenetic field when I said that? Yeah, you like unlocked my memories. Yeah, the escape rooms in this game I found much more difficult than the first game. Yep. I had to get help many times.
Same.
And not all of it was the game's fault. I also made some really dumb decisions or mistakes. I had some moments, actually. But they were entertaining, and the game was kind of structured very well. So, like, whereas in the first game, you maybe didn't know what was coming next and, like, how it was going to go down. As you play Virtue's Last Reward, you'll kind of learn that there's a set structure to the game where it goes novel, escape room, and then another game that we haven't talked about yet. These all create branches, and you kind of know if you're going into an escape room, you're not in a novel section anymore. Whereas in 999, sometimes you'd be in the middle of an escape room and you would get 20 minutes of exposition. That doesn't happen here. It's very structured, and it flows very well, I think.
No, I would super tend to agree with you that, like, compared, they make a lot of improvements. I think the puzzle design is better in this one than the first. Instead of having, like, we are in a full 3D environment in this one compared to, like, the first game, which was kind of like your character models were flat, but the environment, when you were in an escape room, you can kind of move in 3 dimensions, but it was very rudimentary. For this game, I also needed help with a lot of the puzzles. Sometimes it's a lot of, like, picking up item to go to a different part of the room, to use item on that part of the room that gets you another item that eventually gets you to a safe, and then that safe will get you cards that help you get out of the rooms. But the thing that you kind of alluded to is that there are really 3 sections. There's visual novel, there's escape room, and there's a third thing. So the third thing is very much like the first game. You're in what's called the nonary games. So the nonary games is a game with 9 people where they have to execute a bunch of different games in order to potentially escape. So should we set up the story and then talk about, like, what the nonary games actually is? Because I think once we do that, then we can say, all right, guys, time for your spoiler warning, and then dive into how mad this game is.
Yeah, that sounds, I think it's time. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about maybe, like, Sigma and what happens with him to start, and then I can, like, talk about the structure of the game after that? Yeah,
cool. Yeah. So, all right. The game starts, and correct me if I'm wrong, does it start where with a little bit of novel where he is just coming out of a library or a college or something into his car?
Yes.
It is 25th of December. I can't even find
2028.
2028. Yeah, it comes up with a date. It tells you specifically when he's submitting his Christmas work or something. And then he gets into his car, and the gas happens, and he wakes up in a room with a girl, and just a little kind of, it's an elevator, right? It's like small, claustrophobic-ish. There's things on the walls and stuff, and he has no idea how he got here, and she doesn't seem to either, and kind of goes from there.
Yeah, that girl's named Phi, and immediately there is a small white rabbit AI on the screen named Zero, who tells them that there's been a game that's been organized for them. And they will find out more once they escape this elevator shaft. This elevator shaft. They escape it, and they come out into a warehouse. In that warehouse, they meet some of the other characters that are also caught in this game. And lo and behold, like 999, we are caught in another Nonary Games, except this time it's called the Ambidex Edition. Or AB for short, which actually has a secret meaning, which we'll get into. No, I can just say it now. It means after before, which wink we'll talk about. The way the game is structured is that there are what's called chromatic doors. These doors are a specific color, and each participant has a watch. And on the watch, there will be a number, and then there will be a color, and there will be a word, either solo or duo. It's a little different from the first Nonary Games in that in the first one, they just had a number, and they had to, essentially come up with some formulation to go through doors in a combination of everyone's different watches. In this game, the number on your watch actually represents the amount of points that you have. You start with 3. If you get to 9 points, you can exit the big door right in the warehouse, but there's a few things to take into account here. With the door, it only opens once, and it only opens for 9 seconds, and anyone who doesn't go through the door with 9 points never gets to leave this warehouse. If you try and leave and you don't have 9 points, you'll be punished, aka you'll be killed in a way that you'll find out later. And the whole structure of the game mirrors a very famous research paper called The Prisoner's Dilemma. And the way it works is, after a game is done, after you escape a room, you'll come together with your team and decide whether or not you want to ally with your team or you want to betray your team. And based on how that works, the two people, if there's a team of 3, 1 in a solo, 2 in a duo, if both of them decide to ally, they both get points. If they both decide to betray each other, which means you have the opportunity to get more points than you would if you allied, you get more points, but your ally loses points. If you lose points, go down to 0, you die. And so there's always this fun game after an escape room of having to decide really quickly as a team, are you going to ally? Are you going to agree to give everyone points? Are you going to try and backstab each other, but really you're both front stabbing yourselves in the face by getting no points? Or is one team going to betray the other, get more points, and put the other person at risk? That was a lot of words. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it. It's this is an entirely extra thing compared to what was in the first game, and it adds so much. It adds so much tension. It adds it makes you start questioning the decisions that you're making, because it's kind of like a meta game on the game. Anytime you're deciding which door you want to go through, you might be thinking, oh, but if I go through this person, are they going to ally with me or are they going to betray me? And technically, if everybody just allied all the time, we'd all be good, but people aren't like that, are they?
They are not, especially with some of the characters that are in this room. Some of them are a lot more devious than others.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if very quickly you want to set up who the 9 characters are. Why don't you start by sharing maybe your favorite character, at least when the game started? Because each character has a huge backstory and stuff in there. So I'd love to know, when you open and get into the warehouse with everyone, who was your favorite?
Oh, favorite? I don't think I had one.
Yeah, me neither. I kind of was leery of everyone.
Yeah, it's one thing to mention is that basically as soon as you've had your first description of the games, the game kind of breaks up, and depending on what choice you make, you can experience this story in a very different order, which means you might meet certain characters and get to know them before you get to know others. So everyone might have a different experience. For me, I got to know Alice more first than anybody else. Mm-hmm. I didn't like Alice, but she was the first one I got to know. Mm-hmm. And then I moved on after that. Generally, my Oh man, you're gonna hate me. I have a soft spot for a character. Are we in full spoiler territory yet?
Yeah, let's go
that?
ahead and say that if you are interested in Virtue's Last Reward, if the 5-minute diatribe that I just shared interested you in any way, do us a favor, stop this podcast, download Virtue's Last Reward, play 999 first, play Virtue's Last Reward, and then download episodes 121 and 146 of the show. Listen to them in order, Noob's on that one, and we're just going to go full ham on spoilers. So this is your warning. We are going into it. Noob, go ahead.
Sweet. Like, I didn't like him, but I have a super soft
Don't say
spot
Dio.
for Dio.
Oh my god! Do you know what my notes say? My notes say a JoJo Bizarre Adventure looking sign. That's what my notes say. He's apathetic. He's super self-centered. He's so annoying. Why do you like him?
He's horrible.
He's horrible. he's like kind of good looking, I guess.
He's right. So, you know when a character is bad and you don't like him, he's a character that is bad that I like because like he's a very interesting villain.
Yeah.
I just had a moment with him where he presented this dilemma to us where he's like threatening us to make sure that we ally. Mm-hmm. And I didn't at this point suspect that I just thought he was a bit of a lost hand, that was all. Mm-hmm. So I gave him all of the benefits of the doubt every time, and it never went well for me any time. And it's one of my favorite things of this game is how, like, I really thought what he was doing, I felt like he had his own motives, and I was like, oh, he has his own motives, and he can't tell us for whatever reason. I should help him. I don't know why that is where my brain went. Turns out he does have his own motives, but maybe we shouldn't help him.
Yeah, so like I wrote the most notes, so I have notes about every character, and Dio has the most notes. So I think that I don't want to call him a side character, but as like a non-core character to the series, which you're going to find out more about, I think he's the most interesting non-core character.
Yeah. I think he's interesting. I think that's what I mean. I don't like him. I just find him interesting.
Yeah, he's a well-developed character. He looks like a circus ringmaster.
Yeah.
He looks like he could be in the Greatest Showman. That's the Hugh Jackman movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like what if Hugh Jackman made an evil character in that movie? This is Dio. So, yeah, I would agree that like he's probably the most interesting non-core character, but I hated him, and that's fine. But there are other characters too. I don't love that in every game there's a woman who has her like whole chest exposed, like she's got the biggest chest in the world, and it's just all out there for you. And in this game, it's Alice.
Yeah.
Who was teased at the end of 999 as someone who is hitching a ride, who kind of plays up like a lot of Egyptian stereotypes, I think.
Yeah. She's wearing this weird like necklace. Like that's all she's wearing basically.
Yep.
And she is like very like straight spoken, like harsh with her words, not likable.
She's like a cop. She's kind of like a cop. No, I think that's all you need to say about her right now. You find out more interesting stuff about her, like her dad was an Egyptian scientist, mom was French, dad was kidnapped. Like she's got layers to her for sure.
She does. I think that's part of the reason she is why she is, and otherwise she is just also just not that nice of a person.
She's not, and she's friends with someone that's going to be very familiar to a lot of fans of the game is Clover, who was in the first game as well as like that was Snake's sister, like quite young sister, right?
Yeah, pink hair, very like a bit cutesy, but you also don't want to get on her wrong side. She's very I want to say she's grown up a little bit. Probably not. She wasn't very grown up the other time, but she's learned some tricks from Alice, I think.
Yeah, I mean, she was a kid in the first game, and now she's like probably 17 or 18 if I was a betting man.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's a bit like she's quite bubbly. Interesting to be around.
I would agree with you. Then there is Kay, who's a robot man.
Kay's a mystery, isn't he? For like a lot of the game. He's basically this big, ginormous robot suit that talks. Even from the beginning, you might be like, is there even a person in this? Or is this just a robot? Or what?
Because he had amnesia too, right?
He doesn't remember anything. He can't tell you who he is. He doesn't know why he's here. And we can't see his identity. So it's like immediately, what is happening with you? You are suspicious.
Yeah. It kind of like the character in the first game whose name escapes me right now, but they also lost their memory and had amnesia and were big.
Yeah.
It's worth saying that in each of these games, they use at least in the first two, they use what's called the Enneagram, which is like almost this like business leadership like way of bucketing people's personalities into one of 9 categories. We talked about it on the last time we did this. But each character typically feels like an archetype of the Enneagram. Yeah.
I wish I could remember. We did the tests, didn't we? I can't remember who I was now, but yeah, I didn't even think to like link these characters up to that as well. That's interesting.
It's less obvious in this one because in the first one they had like the wristwatch, and on the watch it had a number which matched like the Enneagram.
Okay.
In this one, because the watch doesn't have like a 1 to 9 number, and also the personality types aren't as clearly cut as the first time. Like some have elements of multiple different Enneagram types. So yeah, give yourself some grace on this one. It's not as clear cut.
Okay.
Who do you want to jump in and talk about next?
How about Luna?
Yeah, let's do that.
Sweet girl.
Yep.
A nurse. She's very soft spoken. She's very kind. She's just doesn't have an opinion on anything. And she's just she's a little bird.
I have nothing else to say about her. Yeah, intelligent, sweet, maybe a little robotic, and a nurse, which comes into play and helps out in some of the things that are to follow. Tenmyouji, he's a grumpy old man.
He is a grumpy old man.
He's 67. He's not getting any younger. He wants to get out of here. He's with a little boy named Quark, who has a little helmet on, and he's a cute little guy too.
He has a silly helmet on.
Yeah.
Oh my god, every time I see his hat, I'm like, what is that?
What is on your face, sir?
But yeah, Tenmyouji, just grumpy. Bit more to him than meets the eye. Quark, very smart. Just a child, but very, very smart.
Like a 10-year-old boy, I think.
Yeah. He's, Oh, can't wait to get into more story stuff. I was just about to start saying things. I was like, no, we're not there yet.
Okay, then let's quickly go over the last two. Sigma is who you play. He is a 22-year-old, like, college student. Doesn't have a voice. Not voiced. Which I think comes into play a little bit later. And you are paired up with Phi, who's almost like your sassy sidekick.
Yes.
It's really like the Ross and Rachel of this game, if you will.
I don't know who that is.
Oh my god, Friends?
Oh, Ross. Oh my god, do you know what I thought you said? Ross and Rachel. And I was like, oh, that's an anime character.
Sometimes I speak very fast, so I understand how that can happen.
Oh man. I see Phi as being she's very mysterious. Yeah, she doesn't give a lot. She's got walls up, and she's she comes across as smart as well. And again, as if there's more to her than what meets the eye.
Yeah. Now I don't know where to take this, because we can, like the branching narrative in this game, we could take this in about 10 different directions.
Yeah, I think it's worth now just talking about like the final point of the structure of the game, which is like So you to start choosing your own branch, you will get a choice of 3 different routes that you can go down. One of them, like, basically, I've always thought of them as the route of the person who you're choosing to be in a team with. So, like, one of them is the Alice route, one of them is the Tenmyouji route, and one of them is the Luna route. So you'll be making this choice. You'll go down this route, you'll backtrack and make different choices within the route. And they eventually all lead to endings, and you're going to get some bad endings. You're going to get some to be continued, where you're actually locked out of continuing. And you're going to get, like, the proper ends, and each character has a proper end. Now, when you get to an end, that is absolutely not the end of the game, and the game is designed that, like, it's hard to even call them an end, because you'll get to the end of a run, but then you need to use that information to be able to unlock your other routes, because that is part of the nature of the story. Like, the game is designed that you need to find the information in one section and then carry it over into another section so that you can eventually get all of the ends, which is the goal of the game.
How many endings are there? Like, there's like 20-ish, right?
Oh, yeah. Probably, like, in total, yeah. I think there's 9 proper ends, because there's one for each character. But in total, then there's lots of many bad ends that happen on the way to trying to get the good ones.
Imagine like a tree route, or even like a tournament bracket style, that it's vertical, and everyone starts at one point, and then the story kind of branches down, and like there are probably 20 branches that lead down to each character having a defined end where they are like the ones that have the most agency in that ending. But some of the endings where, like, Dio end, for example, bad. And there are a couple other endings that are, sorry that I keep, like, hitting on your boy Dio, but, like,
no, I agree. I hate the dude.
Some of them are bad.
I just love to hate the dude. That's all.
Yeah, he's a bad dude. I think there's some topics and some things that we need to cover before we talk about, like, where the story ends up. I just don't know if we want to start about talking, like, about Radical 6, or start talking about what's happening on Earth. Radical 6, is that a good place to start?
I think so. One point is that when you finish your escape rooms, every time you'll get a save, and often they will have clues inside, and the story doesn't feed you, the game doesn't feed you the story linearly at all. It's like, it'll give you a hint here, a hint there, and it will get explained eventually. But, like, say you might get a newspaper clipping about this pandemic that's happening in the world, and you'll read it and you'll be like, what? Like, I'm part of the world and I didn't hear nothing about no pandemic. And you'll just get it out of context completely. And then eventually you'll find other clues, and then you'll talk to characters, and you'll all start coming together to form a picture. So that's kind of how it's told. But yeah, where to start is, like, difficult.
Yeah, I think I think I'm going to start with Radical 6, and then there's some other really important, like, probably the Morphogenetic Field, giving some brief on that again. And then from there, like, I think we can unwrap the whole nonary game. So Radical 6 is a disease that is really core to the series. It is a virus that has a couple of symptoms. It's called Radical 6 because your perception of time dilates, and 2.43 seconds is processed as 1 second. So your perception of time is totally messed up. Radical 6, if you look at a calculator, like rad 6, if you type that in, it's 2.43. So essentially 2.43 seconds is processed as 1 second. That's the first symptom.
Okay.
I think you were like, hold on, do I have a calculator? Can I look at that?
I was looking at my computer. I was like trying to visualize it. I didn't know that. That's cool.
And then the second symptom is, in this game, a complete desire to want to end your life. And we get like the first, depending on where you come in the story, there are moments where certain characters like Alice, or Quark just go a little wacky and then immediately try and grab whatever sharp object, usually a scalpel, is available to try and end their life.
Yeah. I think my first instance was Quark. He starts like talking crazy, saying things about his soul and like that he needs to die, and then he goes absolutely insane with a scalpel, and you've got to like grab it off him. And then I think it's Luna injects him with Soprol to make him go to sleep right in the kneecap, which is something that made me laugh every single time it happened.
An arrow to the knee, is that what you were thinking?
Maybe I was like, is it really necessary right in the kneecap? There's a bone there.
He takes a Soprol to the knee.
Yeah. So what happens is, or at least in my like initial run through, is you get the scalpel off him. Alice is the one that takes it off him, and then she just goes missing. She like runs away, and you're like, where is she gone? You go looking for her, and then you like start coming across bombs in the building, and this is, mind you, this is specific to the Alice route. It goes different on each one, but on this one, you like find her passed out in the garden. You find a bomb in the garden, and then you get a lock, and you go back and do it again, except from it goes differently this time. And instead of running to the garden, you actually then find her dead in a different room, and she's already killed herself. And this is, I think, the first instance of a lock or an unlock that I got, where you find her in the crew quarters, and what you then do is you go back into the flowchart, and you can go back to the previous block of novel, and you know that she's in the crew quarters, so you then head straight there, and you can start fighting with her to make sure she doesn't kill herself. So that's like the first like, whoa, this is cool. Like, I am messing with time for good here. And that then leads on to another lock. There are many locks within locks. That leads on to a lock where we've basically got an infected Alice and an infected Quark, and we don't know what to do with them yet. So go and explore some more story and come back later.
I think it's fair to say that this disease is highly contagious.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of people around you start like acting crazy, as they say. And depending on the path, sometimes you can't do anything. Other times you can put them in like essentially these little like lay down. They reminded me of like the hyperbaric chambers from Dragon Ball Z, where like it just puts them in stasis where nothing will happen to them. They'll go to sleep and they'll just be oxygenated and be be fine, I guess. But
Yeah.
Soprol puts them to sleep. Axelvar is the only cure, but it seems like not everyone, there's not enough of that cure to go and cure every single person. So again, that's another reason why you want to get out of this warehouse as soon as possible so that you can cure yourself of Radical 6.
Yeah.
Bombs. You mentioned bombs. There are bombs everywhere. These are called something very specific.
Antimatter bombs, I think.
Thank you. And those get teased out a little bit too, because those are important to the story as well.
Yeah, it seems to be, they do a lot of science talk about this. It's like, it kind of seems like an alternative to like nuclear energy, but stronger. Stronger, I guess, in good ways, because they seem to use it to power the world, but also stronger in bad ways, because bombs, it's
Bombs
science.
kill people.
Yeah. Bombs bad.
Bombs bad. The other thing, too, is we've mentioned the morphogenetic field. Essentially, in this game and in other games, there are these people called espers. I think it's probably based off ESP of some kind. But they have the ability to project their consciousness through time.
Yeah, they seem to be able to sort of do different things, and it all just seems to come down to some sort of link with the morphogenetic field. Like the people in 999 were espers, and then what you seem to be doing in this game, like it reveals pretty early on that you do a jump. It actually happens in an AB game where you ally with somebody and they betray you, and you're like, damn, and then you go back and you betray them and they ally with you, and then your first response is, but last time you betrayed me. And that's like showing you that this isn't just us as a player switching between timelines. The character remembers the previous thing that we just did. So it's not, it's I guess later on we'll find out it's not exactly the same as what was happening in 999, but it's another branch of the same kind of morphogenetic field, science-y stuff.
I had a specific example that I made sure to write down here that speaks to exactly what you're talking about. It is right when I started playing the game, you're partnered with Phi and Alice, and in one timeline you choose to you're in a duo with Phi, and you are in a solo or against a solo with Alice. So the three of you, two of you pick whether to ally or betray. It's you and Phi, and then Alice decides whether to ally or betray. And in one timeline, you ally and Alice betrays you. You jump over to a new timeline where you could literally just make a different choice, and you actually get betrayed. So it's exactly what you just said, but there's the concrete example in Alice's timeline of that happening.
Yeah.
And then there's even instances where like Phi will just and she almost is, she's all knowing to me in this, in that a lot of the time she knows things she shouldn't, or she alludes to the fact that she has more information than you do, the character Sigma. And a lot of the time she just answers and she's just like, hey, I just know it. Or like, hey, just do this and trust me.
Yeah. And she's kind of the only one that does that. I can't remember anybody else being like, oh, like predicting things that might happen or alluding to things that haven't happened. It's just her, and that really adds to the mystique of her. It seems like pretty early on she is maybe doing the same thing that you're doing, which is like jumping presumably between timelines and kind of remembering some of the details, but maybe not all of them. So something happens with Phi where you ally with her and she betrays you, and this could be your first time doing it, but then she goes, but you betray me otherwise, so like suck it up, basically. She's very sassy, and it's like, we haven't done that. This is literally the first time we've ever had this decision to make, and you are like saying things that we haven't done, and then you can then go on to do it, and you can see why she is saying that, because then in another timeline you have done that, and she must have just experienced that first before you did.
I think the game does a really good job of like, they could have done twice the work, and like depending on what order you did the things in, you could have like two different responses within a single timeline. But actually the explanation is that like Phi just has more information and has done more jumps in time compared to the player character, and that's why she usually has more information than you. I think I want to spoil Dio first. I don't know how you feel.
Okay, I think there's one more mystery maybe that we can set up before that, is that if you do any other timeline other than Alice's, you will go back to your AB rooms and you will actually find the body of a dead woman. She is just laid there. Everyone's like, whoa, where did she come from? Who is this? Why is she here? And she has been like stabbed in the chest. And she doesn't appear on the Alice timeline. She only appears on the other two. And Tenmyouji has an adverse reaction to it. He is very, very upset. And it's just, that's another one of those mysteries that you don't really find out about until a lot further into the game. But it does relate to Dio.
Yeah. Thank you for setting that up. That's very important. She's in a blue robe. She has gray hair. She appears to be like a 70-year-old woman-ish, around the same age as Tenmyouji, which we'll know why he's upset in a second after we talk about Dio, who you come to find out, correct me if I'm wrong here, was the person that took that woman's place in the Nonary games and in 2 out of the 3 timelines murders her to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just stabs her and takes a bracelet because he was apparently never meant to be in the games. So he's actually working for outside sources. He is a terrorist.
Yep.
And he has made his way infiltrated into the game for reasons. What are those reasons? For reasons. Bad reasons.
Yeah. He's part of an he's the leader of the Myrmidons, is I believe how you say that. They're like a hand of the terrorist organization Free the Soul, which actually has ties to the first game. My understanding is that Ace, who's part of the pharmaceutical company that is like heavily tied into the first game, is actually also part of Free the Soul. So we're kind of tying both of those in together. They want to cleanse the world of starvation and war, and they do it in the absolute worst way. And they invest in human cloning in order to do so. Surprise, Dio's a clone.
It's a cult of clones.
It's a cult of clones. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to jump in with stuff about Dio?
His goal is, what is his goal? His goal is to take out the old lady. Is his goal to get the cure that's in the facility, or is that not even related?
I thought his goal was that he wanted to like set off the bombs that are inside the facility.
He only puts the bombs there on the timeline where he doesn't kill the lady. Mm-hmm. So it's very like, he's definitely here to mess things up.
Yep. Yep.
But I feel in the back of my head, I was thinking it was something to do with taking the cure as well, but maybe not.
I mean, that's probably the reason, because my understanding is that, again, I guess we're going to start to get into it. So Sigma gets abducted in 2028.
Yeah.
In the world, soon after, there's an event that causes the release of Radical 6 for the planet. There's an outbreak in 2029, I believe, of Radical 6, which infects most of humanity. And then for anyone who isn't affected by Radical 6, there's just like so few population on the world that like it's impossible to sustain the globe that's been created, and like 6 billion people die. Yeah. That's my understanding of it. And then after that, in order to cure Radical 6, they use antimatter explosions to cleanse the world of Radical 6 and start over. I think that's what Free the Soul has done in 2029.
Okay.
But I could have it 80% right. That's what this game is. It's a lot of detail, and like if you're not paying attention to it, you may miss small pieces of it because you collect information on different timelines. Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get a key piece of information to something, but with no other context, so you like just forget about it.
That's 2029.
So, and we don't know this. We only start piecing this together a little bit as we get these newspaper articles and stuff that talk about dates. And then on one timeline, one of the clues that we get is a audio recording of...
Yes.
It's about... It sounds like we're going off on another tangent, but it all comes together.
Yeah,
about,
we promise.
A test trip to Mars. It's not a test trip, but it's a simulation. It's an audio recording of they lost contact, or they didn't have contact because it's a simulation to Mars. And then when they regained contact, this recording talks about it's a girl who says that 6 people have died. Actually, no. I'm killing 6 billion people here. And we're like, whoa, what is this that we're listening to?
Mm-hmm.
And Tenmyouji seems to know something about it. So he kind of starts, he explains what it is, that it's the Mars. This is how we know that it's the Mars recording. The facility is actually in Nevada desert. It's not like actually on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And he like gives us some details, but he won't give us all of the details.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, how do you know about it? He's like, I was involved in the project a little bit. And it's like, okay then, when did this happen? And he's like, I don't have time to tell you all the details right now because we need to go in this AB game.
Yep.
So you get left hanging. And eventually you'll learn that, in fact, we're not in 2028 or 2029. We are in a year that is a lot later.
2074, I believe.
74. We are like 40 odd years into the future at this
45
point.
years later, yeah. And then so main things you have to remember is that, and we're not going to talk about the third game in the series, but Zero Time Dilemma is the third game in the series, which actually tells you what happened, or you play through what happened in the Nevada test site. Okay, so that's 2028. And 2074, in January of 2074, that's where this game takes place. But you don't know that until much later, and then you probably start to ask yourself, wait, wasn't I led to believe that my character Sigma was abducted in 2028? You were abducted in that year. Other characters were also abducted in that time, and they were essentially put in stasis in those pods for 45 years, only to play out this nonary game in 2074.
Yeah. It's a big part of the mystery is like you find these pods and you know they'll do cryo freeze sleep thingy. Mm-hmm. And there's 3 of them and you know that they've been activated very recently. So throughout the game you're like, okay, 3 people may have been in like a freeze sleep here. Who is this? Why is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you find out
which characters were in them.
Yeah. Are we going into that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. You find out that the 3 people that were in it were Clover, which makes sense because we know her back from the first game, which we know happened in whatever year that is not 74. Alice.
28. Yep.
28, yeah. Alice. And Phi is the third one.
Yep. Phi, Alice, Clover.
So that is actually not us. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Where to take it from here? Oh man, should we talk about like Tenmyouji now?
Yeah.
Oh no, here's an important detail that you need to know. We find out that Clover has been in 3 nonary games before, the 2 first ones and then this one. But she doesn't really remember there being like a huge time gap because she was in those pods.
I think her and Alice said they got kidnapped on the 28th of December or something like that, which was like in 2028, so a couple of days after us. And they were actually, I think, preparing to infiltrate a Free the Souls camp. And they got taken away from that and woke up not knowingly in 2075 to take part in this game.
Because the thing you find out about both of them is that they're actually government agents. They are part of an organization called the SOIS, which stands for, I wrote this down, the Special Office of Internal Security, which reports into the Department of National Defense, or the Department of Defense in the U.S. And yeah, like you said, they're trying to infiltrate Free the Soul, get captured, and get put in this game.
Yeah, because since the events of the first game, Clover joined and kind of Alice took her under her wing and started using her Esper powers for good.
Okay, so we've talked about Alice, Clover, Dio. We've hinted at Tenmyouji. I think at this point we have to open the box for Sigma and the other characters, right?
Yeah. So, like, as we've been going, there's been things about Tenmyouji that have been hinted that he either may be somebody that we know or somebody that knows more than we think. He has been kind of insistent on spending some time with Clover. He wanted to talk to her in private, which was like, what does he want to talk to her about? He has a photograph with him that we eventually get to see who is on it. He reacted badly to the body, and all of this adds up to when we see the picture, we see that it is a photograph of Akane, young Akane 999, and then you start thinking like, wait, why is he carrying a photo of Akane? And then as you can start putting things together, you find out that he is actually, in fact, the timeline adds up, he is Junpei, an very old Junpei, and he has spent the last however many years, 40 odd years, looking for Akane. And in the meantime, he adopted a little baby that he found, which was Quark. He got this opportunity to come to this game, I guess, and we haven't really gotten into that yet, but he did get invited here on purpose, because he had to be part of the game. And he brought Quark with him, and that is why he is here. Next is the matter of the dead body.
Yep.
So she is also the same age as Tenmyouji, and he is heartbroken when she is dead, so you can kind of start to put it together. I was very unconfident while I was playing it, but the hints are there. And this actually turns out to be Akane. She got murdered because she is, of course, part of this game. Why wouldn't she be?
Yep.
The Sononary game. For reasons that we also are going to get into when we reveal the final. Well, not the final, but more plot points. Do you want to do the next one?
I guess then I really need to talk about the player character, Sigma. So you don't get to see yourself through the entire game. You don't get to hear your voice through the entire game. And there's a reason for that. So, refresher, we got abducted. We were 22 years old. There's a point in the there's a couple points in the story where you get hinted that maybe what you think is not what is actually happening. So in the environment, there are no mirrors that you can look at to see yourself. They're all scuffed up and they're all dirty. You can't look at your own reflection. At one point, Alice, with her scalpel that we mentioned before, tries to like cut herself. You get in the way and you get your like hand cut. White blood comes out. Humans don't bleed white blood. There's another moment where Luna scans. She does a lot of scanning in this game because she's a nurse, and in the future, I guess we scan for health. We scanned Quark at one point to determine what was going on with him. Sigma gets scanned, and you notice that you have cybernetic arms. Then there's a couple of some of the escape games have like hints to the fact that maybe who you think you are is not what you think. So like on one of the computers, there's like a password game, and the password is "I was you, will be me," and she knows everything, which like again foreshadows what is happening. And kind of when you find out who you actually are, you're in a like garden, and in the garden there's a gravestone, and the gravestone says, I think it's in Latin, so pardon me because I'm terrible if I've never learned Latin. I think it's like "Tu fui egos eris," which means what you are I was, what I am you will be. There's a reflection in that garden there's like a pool of water, and you're essentially pushed to look at yourself in the mirror, and you discover that you are not a 22-year-old man at all. you are actually in a 67-year-old body who is missing his arms, missing an eye, and who looks a hell of a lot like a projection of Zero that you saw in one of the offices in the facility. What? Please help.
What? That was my reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so he sees his reflection, he's like, what is going on? This isn't me. And there's kind of a couple of events happen at a very similar time.
Mm-hmm.
I think first Kay's suit opens and starts explaining things.
Is this Kay's suit?
Yeah, is it Kay's suit? Is a good point. We haven't even talked about Kay in the other timelines.
Yep.
In this timeline, Kay's suit opens up and revealed is a old lady who is Akane.
Mm-hmm.
And she then starts kind of giving you a big explanation about why you're here, you are you. This has all been set up so that... Are we getting into it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went to the third or second to last beat before the ending, so I think, yeah, focus on that, and then there's some, K information we'll backfill.
Yeah, we'll fill in the gaps. So... she starts explaining to you that this was all set up for a reason. There's similar vibes to 999 where the powers that you have work when you're in danger. So this game is set up because we needed to basically get good at this power that we're doing. And the power that we're doing, we're calling it jumping at the moment. And it's not... just seeing the future or anything like in 999. It is, we are physically jumping into the body of a different timeline and switching places with them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole of this nonary game was to get us up to a point at the end so that we could send our 70-odd-year-old brain back into our 20-odd-year-old body so that we can go back to before Radical 6 gets released and prevent it. So, presumably, while we are here, our young brain is in our old body doing this, getting this practice. Our old us is in our young body doing other stuff, trying to save the world. So, this is only where it starts to get mind-bendy, though.
What we find out is, and we've alluded to some of the moments in the timeline, but really there are a few key moments in the timeline, and all of this was set up to have our consciousness jump in a very specific order between those events. I think our whole goal was swapping our 22-year-old consciousness with our Sigma's 22-year-old consciousness and 67-year-old consciousness. We want that 67-year-old consciousness that has all of the lived experience of everything that's happened to go into the past in order to create this nonary games, which has the purpose of getting Sigma and Phi the ability to access the morphogenetic field, so that you have enough people in the Nevada test site in the next game that can provide an ideal outcome to society so that they survive. I think that's mostly it.
So, yeah, it's very... I wonder if it's going to be useful to talk about the moment you were talking about at the beginning, and then kind of get all of the ending out there before we fill in the rest of the gaps.
Yeah, do it.
So, well, the timeline gets funky.
Yeah.
At one point, we jump back to before the game even begins, just before. And we actually... Is this where we save her from Dio?
We save Akane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, Phi kicks Dio's bum, This is obviously from the timeline where she doesn't die because we've saved her.
Important detail to mention about when Fi kicks Dio's butt is that she's jumping like superhero heights, which like in an anime game to start, like I think she does a big jump at like in one of the first scenes and you just think nothing of it because you're like, it's anime, it's fine. She can just jump really high. She's a gymnast. She does it again in that instance where she kicks Dio's butt. And a thing we haven't even talked about is why is she able to jump so high? Is it because gravity is actually different here? Yes. Not only is this not 2028, this is 2074, the game also takes place on the moon. We haven't even mentioned that. We are an hour and 20 minutes in, and this game takes place on the moon.
Yep, it's, because we can't be on Earth. It's a nuclear winter down there. Like,
yep. The Earth is red when you look at it from space.
Yep. Which sort of parallels with some of the themes of the eclipse and a red moon, but it doesn't really have too much meaning other than maybe trying to psych you out a couple of times. The thing I'm trying to explain is when she gives you this exposition dump, she explains the entire timeline that we are doing. Basically, the whole game comes down to a time loop spanned over 45 years. It's only ever a time loop as long as it goes wrong. We don't know how many times we've actually done this, but presumably this could have happened multiple times because we know that this time it went wrong because we have no arms and we have no eye. So and the nuclear winter happened and Radical 6 got out. All of the bad happened. So basically it's designed so that when young Sigma, after VLR, he gets sent back to his young body. He then has to spend the next 45 years preparing for this game to happen again so that he can switch with young Sigma right when he's 60-odd-year-old and get another shot at preventing Radical 6 from being released. So it's a long game. Like, they're playing the long game here.
Yep.
And so in this meantime, he has to dedicate his life to preparing the game, creating everything within the game, making science, making clones, which we haven't even really spoke about yet.
Yep.
Cybernetics, robots, which we haven't actually spoken about yet. And all of that to make sure that this game goes ahead how it goes, to get the danger and the experience needed of this mega jump so they can jump back, try again. It's wild. And when she explains this, there's a really, really good, you've got it in the notes, but obviously this is like an audio thing, so we can't show you the picture. But this chart comes up, this spaghetti time chart, but it makes sense while she's explaining it. It's really good. My mind was blown. And it shows our route as this current Sigma, I think, that we are now. You like go from this time to that time, back, forward, this and that, to eventually, hopefully, make a new timeline with a happy ending.
Yeah.
It's very mind-boggly and good.
Yeah, and I want to add on to a point that you said where, Sigma has to go with his old consciousness to build up a whole bunch of stuff to create the Nonary games. Within that, you mentioned he has to create advanced robotics, which are the golems, which help to execute some of these games. We haven't even mentioned the fact that one of the characters in our pack of 9 is actually a robot. It is Luna. I said a little robotic wink at the start of the show because she is a robot. She is dictated by Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, meaning in any timeline, she kills no one. Her goal is to be another player and to ensure that the game is played the way it is meant to be so that the correct jumps can happen to prevent humanity's demise.
Yeah.
Crazy. The other character that we've barely talked about is Kay. And Kay, in most instances in the timeline, is actually a clone of Sigma.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we have that is just in case anything ever happened, Akane and Sigma's plan, Junpei's plan, oh my god, not oh my god. The plan was just that there was a backup of Sigma that could carry out the mission if something ever happened to Sigma.
Yeah.
And so there's a reveal in that same garden where Akane kind of gives her exposition dump. There's a little cryopod that comes up from, like, when she reveals herself as being inside of K in that timeline, you actually like see a pod come up, and it's Kyle Klim K, who's actually just a clone of Sigma, who grew up on the moon in this suit because he never had like Earth gravity. So he's in this suit to help prevent his bones from essentially being incredibly brittle from being on the moon the entire time.
Yeah. And we do get that revealed to us in a different timeline where we do manage to take his helmet off at one point. We see our own face. We are like, how? What? Like, my mind breaks, and then the game ends. And I'm like, what is going on? And this kind of explains that. He's a clone. In the other two timelines, Kyle is in the suit. But in the timeline where Akane survives, she is in the suit, and he is just asleep, just stored away there.
Yeah. Absolutely great. And, Sigma had to develop a futuristic AI, which is codenamed the Lagomorph, which is essentially just Zero the Third, that little rabbit who runs the game. This game is crazy, and I don't know how you feel, but I always go back to it and say that this is one of the greatest stories that I've experienced in video games, and it sneaks up on you and surprises you, because a lot of the time games like this have wacky stories that are kind of a little crazy.
Yeah. Do you know why it surprises me as well? Because the amount of times I have got this story down in my head and I've known exactly all of the details, and then right now it's hard to remember them again because it's like, it's so intertwined, and like I don't think I've ever played something that has this many twists and turns and reveals, and that is still cohesive and makes sense, and it's not a disappointment. Like, the ending lived up to it for me, at least. It was just like a pleasure to play and rediscover every time I think back to it and then read about it again, and then I'm like, oh, that's that and that's that. And I do recommend to anybody, like, if you have any confusions about the game or anything, like, do some reading online as well, because there's lots of passionate fans that really like to dive in and explain everything, and there is an explanation for most things, and although maybe don't do that until you've played the third game as well. But like, it's not like one of those stories that can set up all of these mysteries and then have a disappointing ending. I thought that it lived up to it, so it's kind of special.
It writes a lot of checks, and I think that a lot of games like write checks and they don't cash them. I think of something even like Metal Gear Solid, right? Metal Gear Solid writes a lot of checks, and I think that as a player you get the payoff and you cash a lot of them. But like, let's say like MGS5, like MGS 1 to 4, there are some threads that are stupid or are never explained, but I think that like that, if you think of that game as anime and that maybe it's a little bit silly sometimes, and clones, spoilers for Metal Gear Solid, if you've never, just skip ahead 10 seconds if you've never played it. Clones. That game has clones. It's silly and it cashes some of the checks. I think this game writes a lot of checks and cashes nearly all of them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in this game, but I think it cashes almost all of them by the time you've played the series, which is something that, like, it sneaks up on you because, like, you look at this game and essentially it's like a visual novel that you just kind of click your way through, and even the escape room puzzles, I think it would be fair to say this. It is not why I came to this game.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, some of them are fun. I like escape rooms, but they're kind of difficult at times. They're simple sometimes, they're difficult sometimes, and then actually how you interact with them is not novel at all. It's kind of like, imagine a 90s video game that you click through like an adventure game. It's kind of like that. It's the story and how cohesive and how many branching stories and how it cashes all those checks to me that just like, if anyone ever says like, hey, like what game has like the best story, this series is up there, is a top 5 in my mind.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about how I rank it, but it is definitely up there. I do agree. It's like, what else I like about it is like the characters aren't perfect. It's not like some story where everything like is all golden and like it's there's hard things that happen, there's hard decisions. There's like I was gonna say thrill, like tension. The pacing, I can't stress, especially in this game, how good I think the pacing is. And it's just, again, special. I think it's up there with, well, actually, I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything that's really like this deep in a game. I just can't think of anything with that depth.
I think Soma's up there.
That was one that came to mind.
I think that BioShock has a twist that is up there with the twists in this game.
Okay.
I mean, BioShock's been out forever. I'm not going to say it, but like I think it's fair to say the twists.
Okay.
I think it's like up there with like a Spec Ops The Line twist.
Okay.
Have you played Spec Ops The Line?
I haven't. I think I might know what happens, but...
Okay. I won't spoil that either, but I think it's like this game's highs are up there with like some of those games that I mentioned, which is like absolute high praise. But yeah, like you said, it's even more impressive that they managed to maintain this tension throughout, because this game's narrative is self-directed. Like, you are the one that chooses in what order you pick, and it doesn't matter what order you pick, there's always tension.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of thing, it's an example of a great game, because, like, although people may argue visual novels aren't games, I kind of disagree with that. Or at least, like, where you get to make choices and, like, do puzzles and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, this can only be told in this medium.
Yep.
Like, that's one of the things that they do. Like, this wouldn't work. It would be a good story, but it wouldn't be as impactful, in my opinion, if it was a TV show or if it was a book.
Yep.
I really like that we are the ones making the choices.
Yep.
We, as a character, are the ones that are doing the jumping between the timelines, putting things together. Like, I think that's an important aspect, and it's definitely up there on those games for me where it can only work at its best in this medium.
So I guess the last part of the game that we really have to talk about is how we end up setting up the third game, which we've talked a lot about the revelations of, hey, Akane was in Kei's armor in the correct path, if you will, or the Phi end, which is technically like the canonical ending of this game. Sigma realizes that he's Zero. Akane realizes she's in Kei's armor. Akane says that, hey, Sigma, you and your old body, I have to send you back in time to be able to build all of this up. And the way that she does it is she actually rushes towards Phi with a knife to stab Phi, and Sigma gets in the way of that. Sigma is knocked over. You're presumed that like the knife kills you, but actually it just really knocks you out. Like Akane uses the back of the knife to like knock you out, and that's when you, as a character, as Zero Senior, as Sigma, are transported back to the past in 2028, and that's what leads to the end or beginnings sequence that sets up the third game.
And that takes you back to kind of a moment that I've alluded to. You kind of wake up, you are watching a TV, right? And
yep.
There's a news reporter on, and she is like talking about the world, and kind of is like, the Radical 6 infection, I can't do this anymore.
Do you want me to read the actual transcript of the announcer and what they say? I do, yeah. Today as April 13th, 2029, and this is the evening news. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't have any news to read. All of our station's reporters have passed after contacting Radical 6, so excuse me, I've managed to keep us on air until now, but I'm out of tricks. It's time for me to sign off. This concludes our broadcast day. I pray that someday our world can be cleansed of this horrible plague. Goodbye. And she puts a gun up to her forehead and takes her own life.
It's like, it's mental.
It's absolutely, you're like, oh, I just learned all these things and this game is mental. And it continues to be mental even in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, what order do these things happen in?
What happens next?
Yeah, so we have gone back to the moment in 2029 where it's the fateful day of like April 13th. Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's the day that all of the, nuclear reactors, antimatter reactors blow up. And you get to see that happen like through a window. Mm-hmm. It's grim. This is what happened to the world. This is 6 billion people dying. Mm-hmm. And then a moment that you liked?
Yeah, so the moment that like absolutely gave me nightmares, and it's probably the one frame of animation that I will remember of this game forever, just because it was such a shocking revelation. And I don't know why, like, I didn't remember that he had cybernetic arms, or that I don't know if I didn't clue in or what, but it's this like really striking frame of Sigma looking down at his arms and realizing that they're like really basic, like literally robot arms, because of the events that happened in the timeline from the next game that leads to this one. Like, you essentially assume the body of a Sigma that survived the Nevada desert experiment, but lost an eye and 2 arms. And it's just this, I super recommend you just, like, if you've not, no, you've played it, so you know this game, but like, just look at it again. It's like a super striking image of him just like mortified at his robot arms. And that gave me nightmares for the days afterwards. So right after that, they're going into their shuttle, and they're traveling to Rhizome 9, which, like, also there's more research facilities on the moon besides Rhizome 9, but they're taking Alice and Clover and Phi and going to the moon to start these experiments to create the Nonary games.
Yeah, and Khan is there just telling us, you need to do all of this stuff in the next 40 years. Yep. It must be mortifying, though. Like, you can understand it. Like, he just got his body taken over by his older self, and then when he came back, his arms were gone. Like, yep. You had one job. Keep me safe.
And Akane, like, very clearly spells it out for you, where she's like, hey, in the next 45 years, you have to create the AB project, the After Before project. Yeah. The, whatever name they give it. The Nonary games.
Ambidex Edition.
Thank you, Ambidex Edition. But in the next 45 years, he has to master genetic engineering, AI programming. He has to create his clone of himself, Luna the robot who helps in the game, Zero Jr., the lagomorph, and then like develop bracelets, chromatic doors. Absolutely crazy that it's just all laid out like this. Yeah. This game's amazing.
It's very good.
It's very good.
It's very good. Every time you think it's ending, another block opens up that you can then go to and do a bit more story. There is a final kind of secret ending that maybe not everybody would get. So as you're playing, there's difficulty levels on the escape rooms. So like if you're struggling, you can turn it down to easy and it'll give you more hints. But if you don't do that, you'll always get an extra secret. No, you know what? It's that, but also there's always a second solution to the room, and that gives you a separate file. And if you collect all of these extra files by getting both solutions to every room, this gives you like a separate ending at the end. And this is like already been announced as it's not actually canon, but it's very interesting to watch. It's got some good things in it, and it's got some like maybe not so good things in. And I think in this ending, you are now Kay back in the 95 timeline, like after the game is over. And you kind of go around talking to everybody and learning things. I can't remember all of it, but I do. My favourite part was you have a conversation with Tenmyouji, and he is explaining how kind of the time, how do you call it, the time splits work. So like how one route does one thing, maybe people die, maybe people survive. One route does another thing. And then if you jump between those things, like basically the other timeline is still there. It's still got to continue living. And both splits are real and are happening. So like, meanwhile, the old us that has just done VLR, like the old Sigma that's gone back, maybe they save the world, whatever, they get to live in that timeline, but we're still here. And it was a very like, it felt very heartfelt to me, and it makes you think of the consequences, how like every branch that you did, every time they died, that happened, like, or if there was any survivors, every time the game ended and you were stuck there, they were still going to end, like, just keep living the rest of their days out. And it was a good way of making you think about sort of multiverse stuff. And they also had some other little bits about Kyle and about Clover and Alice and Akane and everything like that. But again, it's not canon, so it's kind of up to the person how much they want to read into it. But that part specifically was worth, like, definitely, if you didn't get that and you play through that, I recommend going and watching it.
Yeah, I don't know if I went through that, to be honest with you. I probably did. I got all the achievements, or I got all the trophies, so I must have. But that's a really good, like, put another way. Let's say you jumped 100 times in this game. Canonically, what they're, maybe non-canonically, but what the developer is like winking and nodding at you is that every single time you have one, as the player, you are one consciousness. And that consciousness jumped between different sections, where in most cases, the character doesn't save the world and dies. So there may be 100 other consciousnesses that you've swapped places with that are now confused, dead, or like don't get to live their lives as they were. That's like a really, really interesting thought.
It is.
That I
it's
haven't
haunting.
spent enough time on.
Yeah, that's the part that actually really interests me in these kind of stories. And like, I was really glad they addressed it, because I do just find it haunting.
So I guess as final thoughts, what have we not said about Virtue's Last Reward? I think that if we haven't convinced you that this series is worth your time, then there's nothing that will. I think that without spoiling what happens in Zero Time Dilemma, because I would never do that to y'all. If you've listened to this, 90 plus minute podcast and are still listening, I will not spoil it. I think that this is the peak of the series. I think that Zero Time Dilemma is quite good, but this is definitely the thing that opens your mind and makes your brain explode. You know that meme, that blue brain that like has all the light coming from it where your brain explodes? That's this game.
I actually
super worth your time.
Very much agree. Like, yeah, this is my favorite in the series. Like, I really liked Zero Time Dilemma for different reasons. This one is like, it's just everything it does, or like pretty much everything it does very well. I was engaged the entire time. Like, I just loved it. It was entertaining, thoughtful, just good.
Yeah, and from a time investment perspective, it's the thing that I'm just like Googling right now, is that like this game is the longest of all of them. You basically need between 30 and 40 hours to really see everything. But if you've made it this far, you have no excuse not to play Zero Time Dilemma. It's shorter. It's like maybe 20 hours. And I liked it. And you just finished playing that too, and you liked it, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was hard to get back into remembering what happened in Virtue's Last Reward because I was in Zero Time Dilemma mode. But it was good getting back to seeing the differences between them. And it's a very different game, but it's still worth your time, I think. It rounds off the series, and play it.
Yeah, it's more brutal, I think, than the other two.
Yeah.
And these games are pretty brutal sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite wild, actually. Yeah, I enjoyed my time.
If these games are like, if the first game is like maybe 20% Saw, and then this game is like 50% Saw, I think like the Saw horror films, I think that like the third game kind of like goes 70, 80, 90% Saw.
Yeah, it is pretty brutal. There's lots of blood.
Yeah. I will just leave people with this, and I may cut this, I don't know. Acid baths. That's all you have to know.
Oh.
Before I ask you to talk about yourself, they have another game out called the AI Somnium Files. Is that something you're interested in playing or have already played?
That is the next game I'm going to play on YouTube. I've got another game to play first, and then I'm going to play that as a series, so I'm very excited about that.
Okay, listen. You're going to have to come back and talk about the third game, for sure. It's happening.
I'd love to.
We're doing it. It's happening.
I'd love to.
But tell me the game you're going to play before AI Somnium Files, and then talk about where people can find you and your lovely work.
Okay, cool. The next game I'm going to play is recommended to by my friend who actually I talk to a lot about these games. And he found it by searching like games inspired by 9990 Escape series and stuff. It's a visual novel. It's free to play actually on browser. It's called Exit Corners. Okay. It's like an episodic, got like 28 episodes, and he said they're like about half an hour each or so. And apparently it's very good, and like no one's played it on YouTube and stuff, so because like he's been looking for playthroughs because he really enjoyed the game, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna play that like visual novel. Looks like, I don't know exactly which parts of it is taken from this series, but I think it's going to be like thrilling and a bit twisty turny, that kind of thing. So I'm very excited to be trying that game out.
It's just free on browser. That's cool.
Yeah, anyone can play it. It's called like Exit/Corners. The description says something about 5 strangers wake up in a hotel or something, and it sounds very Saw-ish, but I don't know. But
5 strangers find themselves trapped in an abandoned hotel that's set to collapse in 24 hours. To escape alive, they'll have to solve their captors' riddles and unravel the mystery behind their abduction. Cool. Yeah, I'm very hyped for it. Apparently it's like a little gem that not many people know about. That's like me, and I'm gonna find the name of the I think it's called, is it called Afterlife TV? I forget the name of it. Shoot, I'm gonna figure out the name of it while you talk about yourself. But there's this like sci-fi series that came out in like the early 2000s that was on like it was before YouTube. It was on like some kind of weird streaming platform in like 3-minute chunks, and it reminds me a lot of this. It's like very dystopic. It's not about time travel as much, but it's like sci-fi end of worldy stuff that I'll get into. But please tell folks where they can find you and your great work online. Okay. So you can find me on YouTube at www.youtube.com/CtrlAltNoob. You can find me on Twitch, CtrlAltNoob0. I'm on Twitter, which is where I kind of stay most up to date, I think. Instagram, I like to post clips of my streams and screenshots because I sometimes like doing like video game photography and stuff. What else? Facebook, I don't really use it, but I've got it. Is that all I do? Oh, and I have a website. That's everything. Yeah. CtrlAltNoob.com. That's the other one. Yeah, and that's everywhere, I think.
On Discord. I have a Discord server. And
Yeah,
I'm always hanging out on your Discord.
Yes. So if you enjoyed this very long conversation, you got to the end, and you want to find out more, please follow her on Twitch, follow her on TikTok, on Instagram, and then if you're you've got TikTok too.
I forgot about that.
But you can find her there, and then her Discord community is also very lovely. Our communities kind of cross paths at times, so if you're looking for more great people who like to talk about video games, you can definitely find the link to her Discord server on her Twitch, in her Twitch panels under her stream.
Yeah.
Cool. Speaking of Discord servers, you can find our Discord server at leftbehindgame.club/discord. You can find us on social at leftbehindclub on Twitter and at leftbehindgameclub on Instagram. If you like the show, do us 2 favors. Send it to a friend, because that's how people hear about podcasts, and give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. I think this will be our longest episode ever, so if this is the thing that brought you here, then make sure to let us know in the review that you loved this series and that you want more games like this. You can find me on the internet at Jacob McCourt on all major social media platforms, JACOBMCCOURT. I've been making daily TikTok content for 4 months now, over 4 months now, like hundreds and hundreds of TikToks. So if you like me, or if you weren't annoyed by the sound of my voice, what I would love for you to do is find me on TikTok, because I'm dropping hints about game deals and then giving video game history in bite-sized chunks there. So again, at Jacob McCourt on TikTok, I would super appreciate that. We are going to end the show like we end all of our shows by saying, shout out Michael Ruffalo, and that, my friends, is one less game left behind. Hey, I'm Jacob McCourt.
I'm Katie Lesbrance.
And I'm Travis Colnut.
We are hosting a brand new podcast called Cutscenes.
There are tons of video game podcasts and tons of TV film podcasts, but we're going to bring you the intersection of both and talk about video game, movies, and TV.
I know what you're thinking. Aren't most of them not very good? Wrong. Some of them are fine. And we're going to tell you all about them.
Make sure to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. Follow us on Twitter at cutscenes_pod. And most importantly, give us a listen.
See you soon.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.